Welcome to Sunrise Life, the podcast where we have deep conversations with fellow freelance models. And today we're doing a special deep dive episode talking about additional ways freelance models can make some more money, which everybody needs more money, right? So I have Whitney Masters and Astrid Kallsen on the line with me. Say hello.
Hi.
Hey. Yeah, and this is my first video version of this podcast ever, and also my first with 3 people on the podcast. So lots of firsts.
Okay, fun. Cool. This is great. Very experimental today.
Thanks, Whitney. Would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit about you for the episode?
Yeah, totally. So I am Whitney Masters. I am an art model, actor, entrepreneur. I run a small online business and also have, I keep my toes in a lot of different things, you know? And so I think that's why we thought it would be such a fun conversation to have about all the streams of income that we've, you know, adopted kind of through modeling and like are kind of like adjacent. And yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about it today and just stoked to be here.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great idea. And Astrid, welcome. And go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Astrid Kallsen. I've actually used to run a few workshops with Kristy. It was wonderful and really introduced me, I think, a lot to like workshop hosting, which is something that we're going to be talking about a bit on this episode. Yes. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I was going to say interview or a podcast, but I guess in video version, it's not called a podcast anymore, is it?
I think it still counts. I mean, there's a lot of podcasts that are also videos now. I feel like a lot of them are.
I've seen that. I kind of, I don't mind it either. I like listening to them on YouTube every once in a while rather than Spotify. Don't really know why, but for some reason, it's just, I guess it's kind of like this. You get to see the faces and you get to see the interaction and what they're doing. But let's see. I have been mostly a freelance model for the last 10-ish years, a little bit over now. And I've tried other various kinds of things and dabbled in different kinds of career paths. I originally began modeling while I was in college. And then when I got out of college, I fully expected to go into a different career. And instead, modeling just kept calling me back. So it's been interesting to kind of have that background and bring it in. I know actually quite a few models there's a lot of models who don't have necessarily any college experience, but there's also quite a few models who do have college experience or who have decided to get into modeling after trying out careers with their degrees and ended up realizing that they're much better suited for this kind of freelance and self-entrepreneur lifestyle.
Yeah. And then for anybody listening, I'll kind of introduce myself, even though I feel like I did that a lot on past episodes. But for people who are tuning in who haven't listened to previous episodes, I'm Kristy Jessica, and I've done various other income streams that are kind of adjacent to modeling. But I would say that the most successful side venture that I've done is utilizing subscription sites like Patreon, OnlyFans, and I've done other stuff too. And we'll kind of get into that when we dive down a list of ideas that models can utilize for additional income streams. But I would say that my main side quest has been subscription sites for the last 10 years. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're all kind of coming at it from a different angle. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And one thing that I would like to discuss before we get into the list of various ideas is just the fact that being a freelance model it's a lot of work. And if your primary or only source of income is photographers hiring you for photo shoots, that's a lot of pressure on the market of photographers that are out there hiring traveling freelance models. And I have found that in the past, before I ever started using Patreon or any other additional income streams, that just the pressure that I put on myself to be like on Model Mayhem, doing cold calls or like DMing on Instagram, it's very stress inducing. And it also, at least in my case, and you guys can let me know what your experience was like with this, but if you don't have any other additional income sources, then like I was ending up saying yes to a lot of shoots that I actually didn't want to do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's very much how I have felt. Like any time that I was like, all I'm gonna do is travel and book shoots, and it becomes like, travel is very chaotic. You never really know. Sometimes things just happen, and your expenses are more than you had planned. And I just feel like everything gets more complicated and the stakes are way higher when you only have one income stream. And with modeling, and you're never off the clock. Like I always felt like I needed to be on Instagram, like getting back to people, and it ended up just being stressful in a way that didn't help my art or my brand, because I felt like I was taking gigs that weren't always aligned with like what you want my brand is. Yeah, what I want to be doing, the work I want to actually be bringing towards me. So yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. Modeling, other than doing some of the events, has been my full income for the last, I guess like the last like 10ish years since I like began it. I did try looking into other things. And when I got out of college, I like was looking at other jobs, but a lot of those involve having to do internships ahead of time that don't really pay like any money, if they pay anything at all. So my plan had been to start with like using modeling to kind of supplement or create my income, so that way I could go off and do these internships until I could like get a full-time career. And instead I ended up just kind of choosing to do modeling, and I got really into it. And it was kind of difficult because when I was starting to really rely on it as my income more so and more so, I was in a relationship at that time and I didn't really know what I was doing. But luckily my rent and my expenses were so incredibly low, it was easy for me to kind of get started. And I will say, when I started, I did mostly focus on the figure art modeling, or just nude art modeling in general for photographers. So there wasn't, at least like, I didn't have to have a lot of like wardrobe or anything. And I was living, not in Atlanta, but I was living in Georgia. So even though it wasn't very close to like any good cities for making money, at least I could drive to other cities. I try to imagine how I would do it here in Seattle. And like, man, that like, you get Portland and Vancouver, and then the next closest city is like 9 hours away. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I would have ever been able to start this career if I had like lived in Seattle. So bravo, like Kristy. I mean, I think I moved around quite a bit, but man.
Yeah. I pretty much, when I started full time, I learned, that's exactly when I learned I had to start like flying places.
Yeah. No, for me, it was just that I knew I had to start traveling. Like I had to start getting out of like the Southeast. And luckily I could just drive right out of the Southeast. So I never had to really like experience the plane traveling thing. That's been new for me now, and is such a nice new fun expense, including like having to get a rental car. It comes with some of its own benefits, but also it's an incredible pain. And I definitely like that I got this head start, because as I was able to like drive in a car, I was able to pick up a lot more shoots and be a lot more flexible in that kind of way. But it has been really hard. And I learned this over the last few years to rely on like modeling and just modeling for photographers full time. And I've slowly learned that dirty little secret that like most models don't rely on that as their full income, or they live somewhere super cheap so that way they don't have to rely on it quite as or like they don't have to book quite as many gigs. So when I went through my breakup, it ended up actually working out really well that I like, what is it? Like involuntarily went like full nomadic almost and just shot almost every single day in order to make an income. And part of that too is just like, if you shoot every day, then it doesn't matter, or you're aiming to shoot every day. It doesn't matter if you can't book anything on a day or two, or you get a ton of cancellations, because you'll just continue to have things keep going. But I ended up getting really tired, and I ended up coming back from a tour one day where I couldn't get up. Like literally, like I physically couldn't stand up for about 3 to 4 days. And my therapist told me that that was like burnout. And so I realized I had to try to pivot and figure out something else if I wanted to continue to survive and do anything else with my life. But also, even if I wanted to keep modeling, it was going to have to figure out a better way and a better route of doing things. And I know like a lot of people complain about models like increasing their rates, and I totally understand why it like seems more and more expensive, and has just increased so much over the last like 5 years alone. But I have found that like I've needed to increase it in order to keep modeling full time. And now that I've gotten into a new relationship, I've kind of tried to look at ways that I can move modeling into more of this like part-time kind of gig, partially for my health, obviously, but also too, like if I want to be here to experience a relationship, or like be here for my cat who's like 18. So I kind of want to like be here for her last few years. That's like my main goals. She was, I wish I could travel with her, but I know that would never happen. So I
would hate it.
Yeah, exactly. She would hate me so much. She'd probably cry just for me having to force her to travel all the time. So I'm like, I'll figure out.
It's not worth it, girl.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just figure out ways to like kind of be at home a little bit more, focus on health kind of things. And I think a lot of models end up realizing that they have to go through this either later at some point. And there's a lot of different angles. I've tried a few different things, and kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall right now and seeing like not only like what works, but what works for me. And I have like a really good supportive boyfriend here who's like going to help me through some of that as well. But yeah, I like also didn't realize how few models end up in serious relationships because of the amount of travel that like our jobs end up taking. Like there's a few and they make it work, but it does kind of seem as though like eventually this touring lifestyle kind of ends up taking a toll on a lot of relationships.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you touched on burnout, and I do want to elaborate a little bit more on that together. But in addition to burnout, like while we're bringing up like challenges to full-time modeling as far as just getting bookings with photographers, there's other things that like we all have to worry about besides sicknesses, like accidentally breaking a leg. Like if any of that happens, then you're out of work. And that's part of the reason why we all thought that it'd be good to have an episode like this to give people ideas for how they can diversify their income. But burnout is one that I feel like a lot of people have heard of, but like maybe they're like, oh, that's just like, that just means that you're tired and that you need to work harder. But I've experienced a little bit of burnout, and based on what you describe, Astrid, it sounds like you've also experienced quite an intense bout of burnout. And Whitney, I'm guessing that you've been doing this for a long time. You've probably experienced burnout too. What can you guys tell me a little bit more about what your experiences with burnout has been like, and other things that you do in addition to diversifying your income that help prevent burnout?
I think diversifying my income was a huge thing that helped me prevent burnout. You know, and you kind of touched on like other things that can happen, but the big thing that happened to all of us was the pandemic. You know, that put all of us immediately, no one had a job. Everyone was too nervous. And like, you know, some people were like drawing people with masks on and stuff, but most of us were not able to tour, or there were so many conditions on what that would look like. And that's really when I started to pivot, because I didn't have that income stream and that was my full-time work. So I was, I really had to figure it out at that point. But, I think the most burnout, like I get burnt out from the experience of the tours sometimes. And just, I used to get way more burnt out when I did have to, I felt this sense of like, a booking is a booking, like, even if it's, the studio doesn't look great, or it's going to be, in their weird guest room, it's like, whatever, I'll just do it. And that kind of like behavior of not living in integrity with myself is the thing that makes me burn out the fastest. But I think when I had to pivot and, started a new business, that's when I both, kind of got through this hurdle with my modeling career. And because it was, a necessary thing that I wasn't really doing as much anymore, I felt like I could be more choosy because I had this other thing. And I think that reflects in all parts of your life like that. I feel that in my acting as well. Like when I have other things going on, I don't feel as pressured to, perform or like be a certain way for acting. But in terms of burnout, I think I personally have experienced more burnout related to like building a business. So modeling, I think I've been able to keep that at bay. So, Astrid, if you want to touch on like modeling burnout and dive into that, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, building a business can also like create quite a bit of burnout. And part of the burnout too comes from the business aspect of the modeling. So I definitely feel like I was getting a bit burned out because, I mean, I might not have always taken every single shoot that was the most, inspiring, I would say, because a lot of this work, like there are a few photo shoots that are really exciting and just incredible. But at the end of the day, this is like kind of a customer service job. So even some of those like really inspiring and amazing shoots, you're still on. I know I've talked about this with several models. We have this idea that like when you're in the business setting, you are on. Like you are trying to make sure you're not upsetting whoever has hired you or could potentially hire you in the future. And just like that tension or strain to always be professional and always like look and act a certain way takes a lot of toll. I once listened to this podcast that was talking about willpower, and people have this idea that with willpower, you can grow it and make it stronger. But they were saying scientifically, actually, willpower is just more like a cup, and that you have a ton of willpower for a certain point and you slowly pour it out. And once you reach the end of your willpower, you're done. Like,
ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have to like refill it. So you need a lot of time to rest and relax. And I think that's where, especially when you're cutting costs, you might end up like staying on someone's couch or staying in someone's spare room. And that can always be a lot of fun, but it does mean sometimes like having to entertain someone who you might love entertaining. Like I love hanging out with my friends, but I also know that sometimes that means we stay up until 2 a.m. and I have a shoot at 6 a.m. And like, you have to do things to take care of yourself. I've tried all sorts of crazy ways to like kind of create that like restorative setting as I'm touring. So especially when I was in my car, I was like, well, I'm just going to bring all of my shampoos. I'm going to bring my favorite blanket. I'm going to bring like all this stuff to like see if I can still create an environment that I have at home that makes me feel really like comforted while I'm touring. But it's just not the same, especially when you have to bring all that stuff out of your car and into someone else's house.
Yeah.
I don't care about this stuff anymore. But when it comes to the modeling burnout, I do think a lot of the times it's not necessarily always the shoots themselves, because I've done some like dorky shoots and had a lot of fun doing them. So it didn't end up mattering what the content was. A lot of the times it is like answering questions, having to be on 24/7 because someone might message you at like midnight to try to book a shoot with you super last minute, or what more often happens on tour is like, hey, I think I need to move the time around, or I need to cancel, or I need to see like the photographer ends up having some sort of change situation that then you have to like drive and deal with your photo shoots and try to figure out how to navigate their problem while you're like doing everything else. And like, and sometimes every once in a while, I feel like this is the worst, is you just get a lot of people who are not super grateful. And so it's one thing to like do all this work and be appreciated, but a lot of the times you end up doing a lot of work and you end up hearing the photographer complaining about your rate, or trying to get you to stay for an extra 30 minutes or an hour to like do one more concept without like paying you, or like they want you to do something that's like really, really tough and hard, and then they're complaining that you're not doing it good enough. Like, I mean, the amount of complaints I get about snowshoes and that you have to take enough time to like warm up in between and they have to pay for that is amazing to me, because I'm just kind of like, or I get this a lot for underwater where they're like, but why do I have to pay when like I'm not going to get to like click the button for every single second? It's like, because you're paying for the skill that I have to do the thing in the hard condition, not getting to click a button for every second.
Yeah.
Or the travel time or the hiking, and having to explain these things and deal with people's attitudes when it comes to that is what's really stressful, I feel like, and ends up kind of, I don't know, maybe that's not even necessarily the most burnout part, but it definitely feels like you're getting kicked when you're already down. So,
yeah.
I think like for me, what helps avoid burnout is like having a lot of things going on. So if I need to stop working on this thing, I can just do this other thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
Not having, like I do that with projects all the time, where I'll be working on a project and, you know, I run into a wall with it, or, you know, there's like, we can't get past this next stage with it until this person gets back to us or whatever, or I'm like writing something and I'm just like hitting a wall. I just stop doing it and then pivot to something else. And I think having that in my life and like that ability to be like, well, you know, and with photographers too, like I feel like I treat a lot of things like that. Like if it's not serving me, if it's not giving, if it's taking, then I'm like, I think I need to drop this relationship or this dynamic, because it sounds like that's really frustrating to have people complaining about. Like that's just normal. Like you have to pay for the time a plumber takes to bring his things from his truck to your building. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know where I would go with that kind of conversation, you know, like that's so bizarre to me to do that. You deal with that, you know?
Yes. And with all of this being said, we're like, basically I'm hearing a lot of like knowing what your boundaries are, like when you're overstimulated, or at knowing when, you know, to state like, hey, we need to warm up now, or hey, like I need to get some sleep now. It's all, that's all a good part of like managing burnout, is like knowing what your boundaries are and like how to express them. And with all of this being said, as I'm listening to you guys describe like things that contribute to burnout and ways to navigate not burning out, I'm just comparing the freelancer's lifestyle to that of a person who has a job where they clock in at 9 a.m. and they clock out at 5 p.m. After you clock out, for the people that might be listening to this who have a regular job that don't do freelancing or a side hustle, there is a benefit to clocking off and then not having to think about work again. Then you can just watch a movie or go for a hike and not think about, oh, I should get behind the scenes of my hike or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah, especially with freelance, you start trying to like think about how can I make every moment profitable, especially because you don't know if the next moment is going to be profitable. So I feel like you try to make as many moments in the moment as profitable as you can for that like drought scenario where at some point things might dry up or be difficult, or you hit another pandemic. So I actually had a psychiatrist talk about that a lot of freelancers have been burning out like crazy since the pandemic because of the fear that the pandemic or something like it is going to happen again. So they take as many jobs as they can now in order to prevent some sort of terrible situation like that in the future. And I absolutely see that for sure.
Yes. Well, on that note, since this episode is about all of the different ways that we can utilize other parts of our life for making a profit, I feel like it might be a good time to start diving into this list of ideas that we're going to be presenting for other freelance models. And yeah, so let's see. The first item that I have on the list is something that Whitney has come up with. Would you like to describe that?
Oh yeah. It's virtual figure modeling. So I did not invent it. I just created a platform that allows models to sell tickets to virtual drawing events that they create. So, this is what I started during the pandemic. I was like, there's nothing going on. There was like weirdly, I had artists hitting me up saying like, oh, I'll pay you to pose with your phone and like in your home. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then as I just started going down that rabbit hole, and I had stimulus money. So I was like, I'll just build a website. Why not build a skill, that felt like, oh, this could be maybe useful in the future. But yeah, it's so much fun. Like, I love it because it essentially takes modeling, which is what I'm already doing, and allows me to sell tickets to it, it's so much fun. I love posing for artists. So it's just been a great way to be able to do that in my own home. Like, you can just do it whenever you want, price it however you want, and then I pay the models out every Sunday. So there's already people doing this on my website that are making money every week. So you can just join them and start doing that. And it's so simple. You just, for the people on YouTube who are going to be watching this, you just set up a camera like we did for today's Zoom, and then you send the Zoom out and people draw you. And it's just so wild, but people do it every day around the world. So it's definitely, there's a market out there, but I guess this is one of the pieces of wisdom that I really wanted to bring to the show today. And we kind of touched on this in our like ideating and brainstorming around this, but it's really important to be transforming your existing audience into your next audience. So if you're trying to repackage something that's kind of similar to what you're already doing, then you already have a warm market. And that's really important for freelance to say, who can I go to who might need this service, who already wants it, right? And that's what I learned. Like I tried Patreon for a while. That kind of stressed me out, I will admit. The subscription thing where I felt like I needed to make content all the time. I couldn't handle it. So that did not work for me, but I did try it. And when I went to the Patreon like summit that they brought to Chicago, their whole thing was like, your Instagram followers are your next potential clients on Patreon. And I really took that and felt like I transformed that into my virtual art modeling business where, I already had people that were willing to pay me to just draw me. And like, I don't look at their drawings. I don't judge them. They are welcome to just like come and have no skills and have no judgments. And I love that. Like, you don't even have to go to an art studio. But it's been helpful to, kind of move the people that were watching me that were artists onto my new page, which is for Silhouette and Shadow. And on that page, that's where I'm able to convert them into consumers of this product, which is me posing, right? But I think that's really important. Like, it's a platform where people, like, you can put events on there, and people that are already interested in those types of events are coming to that website, but they don't necessarily know you. So, it's like, how can you, whatever you want to do, whatever like income stream that you're interested in, like, how can you take what you're already doing and just transform that into something that's marketable to another group or in another way? For me, that's been really impactful. And, it's been pretty good. Like I built the website, and now I can kind of just put up a weekly session and know that I'm going to make like $100 an hour for that time. And that's really good. Like that feels good to be like, I can do this every week and know that people are going to show up. So that's given me a lot of like stress relief in my life, just having that additional income stream. And I know that some of the models that are on there, they also feel that way, that it's just nice to have something that like you feel like you have some control over in this really crazy world,
And what I really like about the platform that you've created is that there's no like overhead or like major hurdle to overcome in order to be able to do that, beyond just like a basic understanding of how to do posing for artists. And it's you don't need to like go to college. You just need to be like, just pose and sign up for the website.
It's available to anyone. And like, if you have a phone and a tripod and a light or a window, which I know every single model has, then I think it's just such a great thing to try out if you're intrigued by it. And I'm here to help anybody. So if you are intrigued, let me know. I have some dear friends that are using the website, and they would be happy to also give people like, their perspective on it. But it's just fun too. Cause like, as a model, a lot of times you show up and like, at least I had this experience where I would bring these looks that I was so excited about, and then they just weren't picked, and I never got to work in them, and like, I'd bring something on a tour, and like, no one would ever want to shoot in it. Everyone wants to do art nudes on this tour or whatever. So it's nice to, have a space to be like, this is the costume I'm doing. No one's going to tell me what to do. And people can come enjoy it if they want, Yeah. So that's been really fun for me, because I know like some of your listeners might be art models who pose for artists, and it's sometimes like, it just kind of grounded my gears. I'm like, there's so much amazing art out there, and like every single time they just want me to like do these really basic like anatomy kind of poses and things. So yeah, I love the freedom it gives me, and I like that I get to explore my own creativity with it.
Yeah. Awesome. It's awesome. It's a great way. And as part of the reason why I wanted it to be our first like item on the whole list is because it's such a great idea, and I wanted to let everybody know.
Yeah. And it's free to use. Like, people can just join, and there's no cost to using the basic features of the website.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll include the link in the show notes or in the description of the video, so people can check that out.
Totally.
All right. And moving on down the list, I've kind of whipped up this list, and we can kind of like discuss, what our opinions are on each of these items. But the next one that I have is virtual assistant work. Have either of you guys done that?
I kind of did it a little bit, but mostly I've hired for it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I only tried it for a second, especially while I was moving and trying to like, I don't know, have something to do while I wasn't able to tour. But yeah, mostly I've just hired for it, and I've hired a variety of different people to try to see like how I like it best done.
And when
I've
you
hired for it as well.
I've also hired virtual assistants, I guess, as a person who's often on the road and like can't always post to Blue Sky or whatever. Like, it's nice to have somebody that knows your vibe, knows how you like to be represented, and can help you out. And I know some models that have hired other models to do cold calling for them so that they can get more bookings when they're traveling, because cold calling can take hours for like a single.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I would say just hiring a virtual assistant from time to time helped a lot with like some of my burnout, because I really needed to give myself more free time, or if I was on the road and freaking out about stuff, I really needed to be able to hire like help. I think it's a great kind of supplementary job for a lot of people who have modeled before and understand the industry, because otherwise it can be a little difficult to otherwise train people who haven't had quite that experience. But I would still say that like every model is different. So you kind of have to find the model who kind of has your same mentality or like speed as far as like booking, cold calling, or whatever goes. And different virtual assistants will just have different strengths. I have one person that's fantastic at like helping me when I need to do some cold calling or booking for a new tour. I have someone who's amazing at social media. I have someone who's amazing at like organizing, and like they're all really strong in those particular things. So I've had to look for that, but I thought it is pretty good. I've talked to a few other models who are trying, it's not that they want to get out of modeling, but they want to start moving into other parts of their life, like getting married or starting families. And virtual assistant can sometimes be like a really good way to supplement that income when you're too tired from touring, when you don't have time to tour, or for instance, some of the things we were talking about, like if you end up in a scenario where you're sick or you break a bone or you just can't model for some form or reason, like being able to utilize your experience in this other way is a good way to do it. And I've tried to convince other models that getting a virtual assistant is amazing, but I think the biggest issue with becoming a virtual assistant is that sometimes there's just not quite enough demand for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding a client
good
would be the hard thing.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, like if you like, I think like the finding a client like who's also a model, I think that would make a lot of sense. Especially if you did like have a baby, but you want to get back into modeling at some point, then you could kind of even keep building your client base through that, you know? And you could negotiate like a percentage, you know? Like that was a lot of burnout for me, was just all the admin that's related to modeling and all the communication. So, you know, like if there was someone who had reached out to me and said, I'll do all of that work for you and take a percentage, I would have probably been like, all right, you know? I think that, but I think you're right that the demand for it is kind of, just from an economic standpoint, I think it's a little bit dicey because there are so many virtual assistants that are international who are really good, who have really, really low rates. And you have to like, in America, your rate is going to be an American rate, you know, because I always hired abroad. And I had great experiences with my virtual assistants. So, awesome. You know, I think that's where a lot of people do go for that work.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what exactly you need. As far as like cold calling on Model Mayhem and just working with somebody who knows like the terminology, knows how to answer questions like what kind of modeling do you do, or like what are your rates, or like hiring somebody that's completely disconnected from the industry could be a liability and make you look unprofessional if your assistant says the wrong thing. But if you just need somebody to like organize your email inbox or something like that, or something that doesn't involve interacting with potential clients, then, you know, maybe an international or overseas company or virtual assistant would be a good fit. But for me, in my case, any assistant that I've had, I guess I'm just really like persnickety about how people are representing my voice if they are like, for example, posting on Twitter on my behalf or something like that.
No, I think that's a good way to be. Like, you should be really careful with your brand. I never had someone speaking on my behalf, and that would have been a way different scenario, I think, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I've had a virtual assistant who will create like the content schedule for me and basically do all the work. But because she recognized so much that it is my voice, she would be like, hey, I kind of think that we should say something like this, but how would you say it? But she had basically done most of the work for me. I just needed to then give my voice to it. And I would say that like helped so much of the load already, though, the mental load. And then I could just come in and kind of like be creative and be myself, which was really nice. I felt like that was a good kind of teamwork because I sometimes go a really long time without posting just because I can't, especially at the end of a tour or during a tour or anything that's going on. I'm just so tired. I can't decide what I want to post or when I want to post, or I've gotten home from all of my shoots that day and it's like midnight and it's not the best time for posting. So
Yeah.
having someone else kind of be able to control these things is really helpful.
I want to take a short little break to tell you about Model Society. ModelSociety.com is a website dedicated to featuring figurative fine art photography for models and photographers. What makes them different than other portfolio hosting websites is that some of those other websites will still host kind of tacky photography or exploitative photos. Model Society screens all of their contributors for quality and authenticity. So you only get the best of the best on there. If you're not a photographer or model, you can still enjoy and appreciate Model Society because they also have newsletters and magazines featuring their best work and new articles each week. Check it out, modelsociety.com. I will also include a link to Model Society in the show notes. All right, now back to our show.
I kind of have wondered if one of the next things, but I feel like this has gotten so dicey. Like every time I've heard about it happening, it ends up getting so much controversy, is people almost being an agent for models. Like I know we've all heard about some of these and they end up being usually they end up being kind of parasitic in some form or fashion. But I know that there's a few models who are really good. They're just never going to be good at the business side. They're never going to be good at figuring out how to tour or plan things because they just are a little too erratic. And I know from one model and assistant scenario, the assistant was basically planning her entire tours because she wasn't someone who was she had very strong ADHD, and so she wasn't able to plan when she would get her plane ticket and messaging everyone and getting all of that, all the logistics. So she basically did the logistics and would take a percentage of the shoots that were booked. And I could see that being very useful. The only reason I have ever been worried about ever doing something like that is I wouldn't want myself as an agent being represented by models that could possibly be so erratic that they don't show up or become really unprofessional. But I've also heard so often from these new models, because they're completely new people, that they get placed into scenarios that their agent or whatever you want to call them ends up kind of taking a lot of money from them or pushing them into things that they don't want to do. I don't know. I haven't really looked too much into it, but it sounds like it comes with a lot of drama.
It can.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was kind of thinking along the lines of someone taking a percentage, someone that I trusted, that I also felt had a lot of industry contacts. Sure. But a full-blown agency, I think it gets dicey with all of us doing nude work because, you know, that's an agent is, of the same vibe as maybe a pimp if there's nudity involved, if suddenly you're showing up and they're expecting things that you didn't say you were willing to do, but then you're getting pressure. It's well, this has really crossed a line from being something normal, and professional to being something really weird. But that's also, I would say I've heard horror stories from models in really legit agencies where things like that have happened. And or, they some kind of abusive scenario happened and the agency did nothing. So it's like that abuse, I think, happens in like full spectrum of our industry, and we all get to avoid that because we are freelancers, which is, so it's a loop, right? You're like, oh, it sounds so nice. And then you come back and you're like, it could be
control. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I think we all like being able to do the things we like the way we want it as well. So I've even heard people asking, why don't we have a union? And I'm like, because we would never agree. Like most of us wouldn't, like, we could never probably put more than 3 or 4 models together and agree on like what
everything.
Industry standards we would want.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of some models saying that, once they got a certain amount of experience with full-time modeling, that their friends or family are like, oh, you should run an agency, and I'm going to start an agency. And I only know personally of one model that has successfully started an agency, and she's based out of Australia. Her name's Cheyenne. And her agency, as far as I've heard, is very ethical and has a really good reputation, and she works really well with the models that she represents, and they vet all the photographers that are going to be booking models through her agency. But aside from that, just like random Joe Schmo, like, oh, I'm going to make some money with these like chicks getting naked or whatever. Like, I wouldn't want to work with somebody like that.
No. But I've heard, I don't want to like name a bunch of names or anything like that. I've heard of like various models who have tried to turn into almost an agency, and I don't know. It always sounded like there came some sort of drama. So either maybe people didn't understand the contracts or like the agreements or whatever it is. But I mean, for a full-time agency, I don't think that would ever be able to happen with like art modeling. But even with just like having one really experienced model almost becoming an agent, I feel like it can get really difficult to navigate something like that. So good for her. That's impressive.
Yeah, she does a good job as far as I've heard. On the interest of time, I think we're going to move on to the next. No, you're good. I'm loving all of the ideas and stuff that you guys are mentioning that I would never have thought of either, too, because I didn't think about agencies. But that could be something that could be an option for people if they want to really do that. But I would say maybe just being an assistant like for individual models is probably easier, because then you can cater to like exactly how they're running their business. Because like you guys said, we're all so different in how we function as freelance models. So yeah,
exactly.
But on the topic of agencies, like I'll just throw it out there because I know we also chatted about speaking on this topic. Having an agency is also a really good way to have access to gigs that are outside of your normal parameter, photography, art modeling. And I know, I mean, there's lots of models in our industry that have agencies and stuff, but I think that is also like a really, in the same vein as like virtual modeling, where it's like, you got all the things you need. You have a phone and a tripod, like you can just submit to agencies and potentially get in one, and then suddenly have access to jobs that you can't really get as a freelancer. It's a bummer. Like that's the thing about agencies that, why would anyone, want to sign up for that? Well, it's because they are the people that can get you the gigs that
the big commercial
randomly have big payouts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And commercials are really low hanging fruit because they just want people, they just want people that have good looks and look kind of normal on television. So, all of us could fall into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good also side hustle for people. You have to be accountable to an agency, but it's not a nude agency. So you're never going to show up somewhere and have someone be like, take your top off.
Right. Yeah, probably not. I guess something that would kind of go hand in hand with the agency, which is like maybe the next one that we could talk about is acting.
Right. Like that's kind of where I'm going with this. Like everyone can be an actor. Everyone can be an actor. They're just looking for commercial people. A lot of times they're just looking for like real couple, real redhead. Like real people is a huge thing that there are whole agencies that are just about real people. Like you don't have to tell anyone you're an actor to be qualified for that pool of talent, So I think everyone should do it. I had a meeting with Illyria yesterday telling her like all the things she needed to do to get into acting, and it's not a lot,
Really?
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah. I feel like the big struggle is trying to find a legitimate agency and knowing what to expect from an agency. Because when I was looking into agencies, it just seemed very hit and miss as to like whether they were going to actually be helpful. And I heard from a lot of people in agencies that maybe they never get selected. I've also heard from some people in agencies that agencies are great as you get older because they need older and older, or they need older models, actors, etc. And the pool that they can select from ends up getting smaller at that point too.
Right.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I think that like it's a good, because as models, it's like, okay, of course you could model forever as an art model, but is there something you do want to transition to at some point? Like if you still want to be doing this, agencies need older people because there are fewer and fewer of them that remain interested in the work. So, if this is the lifestyle that you're going to be living forever, then, why not strap in and try to go for the long haul where you can be advertising depends later,
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Or,
and it makes a lot of money.
We love depends. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I do think they are really hard to get into, especially early on in your career, but it is in part the volume, right? Like there's a ton of hot younger people who are like, I'm hot, I'm going to sign up for this, or, I want to be an actor. And they, as those things don't always come in, or the lifestyle that's required, everyone jumps off, gets a 9-to-5 because that's really what they want is security in their life. And so, as you get older, I think getting into an agency could make more sense.
Yeah, from my understanding, agencies do not necessarily supply security unless you become one of their like top hit model actors or something like that, and you just make it. But that's so far and few. Usually you're just getting hit up for a commercial gig every like few months to few years or something.
Totally.
It's supplemental.
It's not super common, but exactly right. It's supplemental.
Yeah.
Another one that's on the list that could be supplemental, I guess, depending on like your skill level. This one I think may have slightly more of a hurdle because I believe that you need to have some kind of permit or like complete some kind of like a training course, but makeup artist. I know some models who are really good at doing makeup and photographers will hire them to help with makeup on set. I don't know if either of you guys have had makeup work at all or have just worked with other models who also happen to be makeup artists.
I mean, yeah, I know some people who were modeling and they got more into doing makeup gigs or special effects. I think the special effects really helps a lot. Sometimes people who are doing makeup and special effects also get into modeling, like Dane Halo. I mean, she wasn't doing special effects, but she was doing makeup. And so if a model didn't show up, she could jump in and model when she was hired as the makeup artist. But yeah, I've met quite a few who end up just transitioning and going from doing modeling to special effects or makeup. And I think for certain jobs, you do have to join the union. And you can get hired for like certain kinds of TV jobs, commercial jobs, etc. if you're not unionized, and therefore you would need to get the certification. But just for being hired for weddings, etc., like you don't necessarily need the certification. Sometimes it helps and it makes you sound more official, but because you have to get the certification renewed like every year or every 3 years or something.
Oh,
Good to know.
so much. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I second all of that. I know people that have done that transition. And again, I think it's a good lifestyle fit because, it's a gig, so it can just easily fold into your availability. And I think that the thing that costs a lot with makeup is the makeup. And I've been on sets where someone has brought like a tiny bag and this is what they're going to work on me with. And it's just really clear, like, this is someone that they kind of like thought that their makeup looked good and they brought them in. But I think to be like a professional makeup artist, there's like a pretty, unless you already have a ton of makeup, even if you do, like you have to get a ton of skin tones. And so there's the kit itself, I think, is a pretty steep investment for that particular one. But
the problem with the kit too is that it expires like every 6 months or something. So you have to renew your kit constantly. I do it a lot because whenever they say makeup expires after 6 months or something like that, as like a professional, you have to like renew that kit. As like us ourselves, if we get an eye infection because our mascara is like too old, that's on us. But if you're a makeup artist and someone gets pink eye because your mascara is like a month expired, it's on you.
Yeah. So a little bit more upfront cost and potentially liability.
Yeah.
But for people who really, really enjoy the art of doing makeup, it could be a great side income.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, if you can know how to do a little bit of hair, people love just being able to hire a 2-in-1.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from makeup artist, have either of you done any paid work as a photographer?
I've done a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I never necessarily sought out paid work as a photographer, but I guess weirdly enough, as just being a model, I had enough people following me who liked my work as a model. But if they saw that I also did work as a photographer and they liked that work, they would end up hiring me for doing things like that. So I have considered going more into photography, and I kind of bounce that idea around back and forth because I see a lot of people who think you have a camera and therefore you can get jobs. But I think it's going to be just as much stress and just as much work as modeling. The nice thing is, of course, you get a huge like client market because anyone can hire a photographer. Like it's not just people with a camera who can hire you, like with modeling. So your pool's a lot bigger. You don't cold call though. So the like advertising is completely different. How you got to work with people can be very different because at least I think with modeling, the photographer kind of understands what we're doing, but with clients, they have no idea. So sometimes they can think magic or miracles can happen that like aren't possible, or they don't understand what is possible. So you have to deal with like realistic expectations. You have to deal with people who think you're just pushing a button. You have to deal with mostly a lot of emotions because people, at least like in front of a camera, are very, very insecure. Everyone has horrible like image insecurities. And so you're going to have to deal with a lot of that as a photographer, as well as like you need to make sure you're pricing yourself for all the time you spend editing the image. So at least as a model, like I do have to figure out like my travel time as well as like my hair and makeup myself. I kind of factor that into what I'm making at a shoot. But as a photographer, you also need to make sure that you have factored in how much time you're going to spend editing these photos or doing, like the client consultation, and factor all of this into your packaging. So it's just a little different, but I have considered it because it does mean, well, a lot of people can travel as a photographer, and I've seen that. A lot of the times you get your best and most clientele just at home. It's all through networking of like your you work with your friends and then their friends see those photos and then want to work with you. So it becomes much, much more word of mouth and SEO. So there's just, it's a whole different kind of advertising scheme that can sometimes be just as difficult as modeling, but it does come with it does come with some really nice new perks, such as getting to stay at home and having maybe more regular clients. And I've kind of thought about it more so too, because you can charge a lot more as a photographer than you can as a model. And the scale for charging is so much wider. So some people might charge very, very little as a photographer, and some people can go very high end. Versus when it comes to modeling, you're like much cheaper models who might be like brand new or not have any clue what they're doing, might be like 50 to 75 an hour, but your like high scale models might be 200 to 250 an hour. Like that's not a big difference. Versus with photography, I could be charging 150 a session, or I could be charging 5,000 a session.
Yeah.
And that 5,000 can mean that I can focus on being very creative with those photos, working with really high-end clients. I mean, it's just different kinds of experiences. And I know some people who do like being the cheaper photographer because it means they show up, they take a bunch of photos, they throw a Lightroom preset on it, and then they get to like focus more on the photography. Versus I feel like I would want to go more luxury because I don't mind doing photography, but it's not where my like heart would be set as much as like the client experience would be more of my interest, and creating sets. And these are things that I want to do with modeling that I just haven't been able to, but it's like you get to create the set and the production, and like the client ends up relying a lot more on you for set, like for what they come up with. Of course, I think sometimes clients will have their own opinions, and some of them will be a lot more direct. And as a model, it's kind of like, we show up to a photo shoot and we're like, oh, we brought all these wardrobes because we thought it would work with your look. And the photographer's like, no, none of it. I don't want any of it. And you end up like having this dress that you found that you've been in love with, and you'll never shoot it for like years or something like that.
Yeah.
Versus as a photographer, you'll be like, hey, I think this is going to look really good. Let's try it out. And unless the client is like, no, I'm really insecure about this, blah, 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 blah. Like, you'll also probably just end up with a client at some point that's going to be more interested. And I thought too that like part of like not burning out would be getting to focus more on like my own projects and self-portraits. And I think being able to dive more into photography would mean that I could cater more to my self-portrait concepts, because I wouldn't have to move around as much, and I could focus more on like building projects.
Sounds like you've thought quite a bit about this.
I've thought a lot. I've gone back and forth a lot whether I want to do it, and I'm just like, I'm not ready. And then I don't know. Yeah, I think this is going to be the year that I'm going to dabble my toes a little bit more into it. But I never like to jump into anything too quickly. I want to like way overanalyze it and go back and forth. But it's not a great quality.
I do feel like sorry. I feel like a lot of models are this becomes like the gig for them, you know, like the gig that they transition into, or the gig that they start doing on the side, because you just pick up so much as a model. You just learn on set. And I think I think this one makes a lot of sense, because also a lot of photographers have so much gear, and I definitely know I'm not the only one who's received random gear from a photographer. You mentioned, I thought about taking some photos. Suddenly you have a camera. So I think this is a good one, Kristy, because it is really accessible. Like, all the knowledge is very accessible, and even the equipment could be pretty accessible to a model. So it's a low bar of entry. But Astrid, it sounds like you're, showing us all of the things that there are to think about, because it's making money doing it is a very different thing from simply taking a photo.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, from modeling and talking to other models who have transitioned to photography, modeling is the best paid internship for photography. best you can ever have, because you will see every kind of studio, you will see every kind of lighting, you'll see every kind of lens, and you will see all of those things and how it looks on you. And you'll typically like kind of have a rough idea of what you look like. So you'll come to understand that like you like this lighting, or this lighting does better for this kind of situation or circumstance. And you'll see all of these things that you can then take and adopt for yourself. And
you're always surrounded by people who are more than happy to explain every aspect of it to you if you ask them.
Oh yeah. It's very easy to be, I was just going to say mansplained, like photography during a modeling session. But even if you don't want to think of it as mansplaining, because sometimes I just ask if I'm curious, like, they're information. They love talking. Yeah. And I will say, knowing the photography element does make you a better model.
True. I agree with that. I definitely agree. So,
don't you shoot, Kristy?
I do shoot, and that's one of the reasons why I had it on this list. You know, I take self-portraits. I've got a camera also for like YouTubing, making higher quality behind the scenes content and all of that stuff. And, you know, I've in the past was really into YouTubing. I wasn't monetizing it, but I was using my YouTube to advertise everything else I did, mainly driving traffic to my Patreon, where the Patreon also has like high quality video footage of stuff. So, you know, I have a drone, I shoot aerial photography. I, for a while, had an underwater housing for my camera. I recently upgraded my camera, so I need new housing. But some of the work that I've gotten paid for has actually been photographing properties that people are like needing to get images for their Airbnb profile, or images of their property aerial for their like Zillow profile. And I've done a little bit of that, but just having the tools is great for me for like maintaining my social media presence and just having good quality content to advertise me as a model and my subscription platforms. And then also I could, you know, segue more into having people hire me as a photographer too. So it's a good side hustle, especially for those models that happen to have a camera of their own and have the knowledge of doing photography just by proxy of being a model for other photographers.
I honestly feel like having a good sense of cameras, or at least how to get footage, is so imperative to so many jobs these days.
Yeah.
That it kind of goes hand in hand with just so many things that we're talking about. Like you know, what you were saying about like using your YouTube to drive traffic to your Patreon, like that's what it's all about these days. Like how can you get one piece of content and use it on all these different platforms to drive all these different types of people wherever you want them to go.
That's my jam.
With social media. I mean, I don't know that we have it on the list or anything, and I don't know that any of us could speak to it, but a lot of models have thought or looked into like becoming influencers and how they can start like making money from just social media and like selling things through brands.
Oh my gosh, that's like all the agency models I know. They're all like baby influencers. Yeah. All the agency models have become like influencer adjacent, and it's kind of strange. I see the agency models I'm friends with. I'm like, okay, I guess, you know, you can hate on freelancing, but at least I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Especially, I remember before influencing really became a big thing, and a lot of models did supplementary, and you can still do this, but like, what is it called? When you go out to like try to sell cigarettes and alcohol to like people, like you become hostess at parties and things like that. Like you can be hired by like various brands to do that, or be promo modeling. Thank you. Or I even had a friend who was hired by like, I don't think it was Whole Foods, but it was like one of those to like sell this detox juice. They wanted a model who would be like really attractive to try to get people convinced to like buy their whole green, I don't know, juice thing.
Yeah. I've done a bit of promo modeling a while ago. I forgot about it. Wasn't even on the list.
But it's still there. Like I forget about it, and then I hear about it from time to time. Some people make a ton of money off of it, but it definitely pays a lot less, and you have to be a lot more extroverted.
Yeah.
than I think most models are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like a way lower hourly.
Yeah. So it can be fun for people that are social. It could be a fun side income.
Totally. Influencing too. No shade on influencing.
No shade on influencing. I guess influencing is kind of like the digital iteration of promo modeling in a way.
Yeah, totally.
Actually. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't want to skip over this one just because we sort of touched on it. And this is something that a lot of freelance models got into when the pandemic hit and we couldn't do in-person shoots. Remote shoots.
Sorry. Forgot about that. I feel like some people just like did remote shoots and did it great and now are like still doing it full time almost. And then other ones like me just like tried it here and there and it's just like header hole.
Yeah. I didn't like it. I felt like I was doing 100% of the work and getting paid the same amount. And that always bummed me out. But I know I love some of the remote stuff that I've seen. So I think a lot of it comes down to like having a good setup and like a good space to be working in and like light that's set and like I could never figure out how to do remote tethering with like a flash bulb going off as well. Like I was like, that's too much for me. So I think if you already have that and like, you know, because remote shooting is so nice if you've got that kind of setup easily ready to go. And it's very similar to virtual modeling. I just ended up
feeling like setup though. Like
it's so much
modeling, because I love like a virtual modeling where like I've gotten to set something up and they're gonna like draw or sketch, but like you don't have to have like a great production value, so to speak. But I also found my biggest issue with the remote modeling was how picky photographers are when they don't get to choose their lighting, their camera, their lens, their setup. Like they want, even if like I would just be traveling an hour to 2 hours to their house for them to do the exact same thing in their garage or their basement. They love that versus me setting it up in my apartment studio with my lens and my camera. Like, plus the like lag time of the internet, it's just like drives some of these people crazy. And I was like, okay, I've hit my quota on complaining for the next like year of my life, but I didn't want to do it. So I don't know how these other people do it. Good for them. I kind of loved it because I was like, this would be a great way to like start building sets and do like some lighting and I don't know, kind of help conduct like more photography stuff. But I think the only way that it would actually be useful, at least for me, would be for helping teach new photographers like what I'm looking at and how I might utilize lighting, because they could see what I'm setting up and then see it from the back of the camera. Or teaching models maybe like how I might be posing and doing like more instructional kind of stuff, and would do that if I found more time in my life. But right now I haven't quite set things up like that. But yeah, the complaining was just so much to me that I was like, you can't pay me enough to listen to you guys like whine about how I'm using at the time a Canon camera instead of their like Nikon something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I never personally actually did a remote shoot. I have all the equipment that I need for it. But at the time that remote shooting started getting popular, I was living in a van. And so my internet connection situation wasn't strong enough, or at least not reliable enough, because I didn't know at what date I'm going to have no internet or like crappy internet or so. But I was really excited for the people that were able to rely on that to help them pay their bills during the pandemic for sure.
I loved that, and I love seeing the work coming out of it. Some of the stuff was amazing, like Sienna Hayes stuff that she did in like the Canadian studios around her, and then Ivory Flame. Those are like my fave remote stuff that I saw.
No, Lucy, art model in New Zealand, was doing outdoor like at vacation too.
Yeah, I remember that. Incredible. Like, how you doing that? How's our Wi-Fi? Out there?
Yeah, so I think she had a special.
New Zealand just has international Wi-Fi, doesn't it? I thought that was the conversation. Maybe it is just a hotspot, but I thought someone was saying that New Zealand just
I've definitely
everywhere.
I've used a hotspot to shoot outside or like in abandoned spaces remotely. So I've done it, you know, I've done it. It's so stressful because if you're having trouble getting a connection or something, or they like something shuts down and you're like, well, damn it.
Yeah. There's a lot of technical issues.
Yeah. So if you're willing to deal with the technical issues and photographers maybe having comments about what kind of gear you have, then, you know, if you're willing to deal with that, then maybe remote shooting is a good option for you. But segueing from that, it feels like at the beginning of the pandemic, when a lot of us were forced to come up with another income stream, it seemed like it was one of two things. It was either start remote shoots because you can't shoot in person, or start an OnlyFans or another subscription site and like make your own content and sell it. And that was that's been one of my like consistent side incomes personally, is having content that I make on my own, or working with photographers who are willing to allow me the permission to share their photos that we created together on Patreon or OnlyFans. Or there are other platforms too for the people listening. There's Bentbox, and there's like kids, and there's Clips for Sale, and there's all these different platforms. But in my experience, Patreon has been my favorite. OnlyFans, Patreon's been my favorite. It kind of went on a decline for really popular in 2020, but now OnlyFans is less popular, at least for me, and my Patreon has been going really well the last year.
Wow.
For anybody listening that's interested, Patreon has monumentally improved the way their platform works in the last year, with lots of new features that make it easier for you to get more paying subscribers. So I'm super pro Patreon. I love it. I try to use all of their features. They have features where you can like, it automates swag, where people like, you know, you can set it up to where if they've been your subscriber for 3 months, they get a sticker or like a poster or something like that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Cute. Very cute.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but it is a full-time job of its own, because you have to come up with your own posting schedule and like come up with consistent content that your followers like. But having a social media following and being able to funnel it towards like an income,
so important.
Yeah, it's an income that can be technically like infinite, because there's so many people in the world that could maybe be subscribing at just $5 a month. And if the way that you're advertising it is like a good hook, then you could make a good amount of side income doing it. But honestly, I almost feel like the content that advertises for your subscription site is almost more important than what's in your subscription site itself. Because without the billboard, you don't have people buying the stuff that's in your page. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't know. I know I've like looked into Patreon and OnlyFans a little bit, but it is a lot of work. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is you're probably not going to make a lot of money at the beginning, because it takes a while to grow that audience. So like it can be a lot of work to start with, and then to hopefully like gain. But it's true that I've also heard a lot, and I've been trying to think about this a lot when it comes to like any business that I might do, that if you're selling your time, you're like always kind of be at a deficit, versus you need to figure out how to sell a physical product, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to carry you throughout your life. Otherwise, you're going to be really tired and burned out, because selling a physical product you can sell many of, but selling your time, you'll only ever have so much time. And here, I think that was something that was like really devastating to me through the modeling, with like, no matter how much I worked or how long I worked throughout every single year, I still couldn't work more. And so I was always going to be stuck at a certain income, never be able to reach more until I figure out some form of physical product. So I know for a lot of people, it's either doing monetization or Patreon or OnlyFans. And I'm not entirely sure what else you could really do as a model. I know some people talk about prints, but I don't know that anyone will ever say that you can make an entire business off selling prints.
I'll throw this out there. Like, I know models that make a lot of money selling art references.
Yes. Oh, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that's what I was doing with my Patreon.
Yeah. So that's I sell art references on my personal website, but I know all of the websites that you listed, Kristy, are websites that people use to sell art references as well. So, I think it's a good thing to throw out there as like, if you or like, some of the content that I received from photographers, they say, oh, you can do anything you want with this. I don't care if you sell it. I don't care what you do with it. And they just give me the files. And so I can sell those for art references.
Yeah.
And that's a nice supplemental income. I do find it hard, like, to figure out how to advertise things like that. Like, maybe that's a whole podcast episode you could do, Kristy, about just like the content to advertise, because I'm always coming up against walls where they're like, stop using nudity. And I'm like, I get that, but I don't know what else to use. Like, I get really like, or the website itself has nudity on it. And they're like, well, that's kind of the whole point. So
it could be a whole
it's hard
episode
to advertise. Yeah.
I have definitely experienced, that was one thing that was really interesting, was like a few years ago, my Instagram told me that I couldn't post nude work anymore. And so I haven't posted nude work on my Instagram for the last 3 years or something like that, or almost 4 now.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten a lot more non-nude work. It's actually opened me up to a lot more faces. It kind of sucks because I think a lot of clients who would otherwise hire me for like the art nude stuff don't feel quite as inclined or interested. But there's also a lot of, I found, interest in figure drawers looking for non-nude work. Not necessarily nude, but just because they're looking for like drawing references of draping and fabric and stuff like that, and character references. So that was something I ended up weirdly getting into during not Patreon, sorry, but during the pandemic. Another P was people who wanted me to dress up as a certain character so they could draw it for like comic strips or video games or whatever else. And like, they would be like, I need you sitting and being this like 5 different characters at a table. So one person's sad, one person's winning, and like, I don't know. It was just kind of funny. But so it can dive into a lot of different weird areas. And I know for a group that I used to do a lot of figure modeling for their website, they would always come up with one set that was clothed that they would use to advertise the rest of the set. And I think it just slowly drew people into there. But it's true. I mean, even Facebook is like, hey, your website connects to nudity. We don't know how we feel about this. And I'm like, well, I mean, Facebook, what have you done for me anyway? So
yeah, right.
As long as you're not going to delete it, it doesn't bother me.
The censorship of our main platforms does make running a business kind of hard. One of the things that I really wanted to definitely get into, which I think is a great option for people, is, which Astrid definitely has a lot of experience in, is event organizing.
Yeah, such a big one. And it seems, Whitney, I think you've been getting into quite a few of it as well, but I think also just hosting events for the figure drawing is like a whole other side of event organizing too. But yeah, I mean, me and Kristy started doing these events in Mexico where we would host people for underwater because it was such a niche market. They're like, how can we help people get more into this, and especially in a more natural element? It helped a lot of stuff like that. But now you see a lot of models hosting events all over. And I felt kind of back and forth on this. I think sometimes it can be a nice supplemental income, especially now, because there are so many photographers that only want to do events. Like, they only want to go to somewhere exotic or unusual or something they usually wouldn't be able to. But as an event hoster, I think it's changing now because I see so many of the prices of events changing. It doesn't necessarily pay that much better than touring. And as far as the work goes, sometimes it doesn't. It's a lot more work or a lot more stress. Because, for instance, if I get like a cancellation while I'm touring, I might be out like a few $100s. But if I get a cancellation from like an event, I'm probably out a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
So it comes with a lot more risk. And some people with their event planning will go ahead and like factor that into the prices that they're putting in. So if people are paying a lot of money to go to these events, And part of that is the security that if some, like, they can't book out an event, that they won't be completely out of money. They'll at least break even in some form or fashion. But event hosting can also mean a lot of craziness can go on, because you're usually renting some sort of venue or you're going to some location. There's a lot of like hecticness. It can be very like easy to figure out what you need for an event. Usually you just need like the location, figure out how often you need to go, and then the like price structure based off of like how much your housing and food and et cetera is going to be for everyone, if you're going to provide or not, as well as the models. But when it comes to like dealing with the drama and logistics of like trying to market it,
yes,
and then trying to deal with the problems that can happen, such as like when we would host every so often, like what was it? I think like every single house that you get in Mexico has some problem with it one way or another. They either forget all the towels or like half the showers don't have hot water. Things
Mexico
like
always had problems.
Mexico just always has problems, but you have to be ready for these things. Or I had a friend who just comes to the event, and one of the participants who came was sick, and then everyone was horribly sick on this trip, and including her as the event hoster. And like that's that can end up like getting into a huge situation or scenario. But these events are pretty expensive, and it can still be like, I think it's just kind of more fun and a good way to keep yourself inspired while you're like burning out and stuff like that, is you get to kind of find a place that you find really inspiring. I would just say that I go back and forth between being like, oh, I want to host this really amazing idea, to you end up getting a bunch of people who are like, I don't really care about your idea. Or you like kind of ends up bringing like the horse to water and the horse never drank. So like I've hosted so many events where like I don't think I ever see a single photo, and I'm like, man, we put all of this together and did like traveled this far and brought you guys all over the place and like put a lot of work into it. And then, not that it's necessarily about the photos, but because event hosting doesn't necessarily always make like more money than touring, you've just done a lot of work for the same thing you probably could have just done at home in people's basements. So I think sometimes it's just I
was going to say the profit margin for, like, for example, the Mexico underwater trips that we did, it did equate out to similar to what my full day rate would have been if I did like 3 full days of modeling, like in the United States. And that's the profit margin after the cost of the flight and the Airbnb. However, what are the likelihoods that I would be able to go to Mexico and get hired by a photographer for those 3 days and pose in all these cenotes, like for like a 3-day booking? Like the likelihood of getting a booking like that is really slim because of the cost is so much. So the cost for the photographers that are attending those events, it's actually a good deal for them. And I think that just the skill of being able to pull off a feat, like putting together an event that is successful where everybody survives and gets pictures and nobody gets arrested at any of the locations. That never happened.
Luckily, no.
Being able to pull it off successfully, I think, has given me the confidence to, maybe in the future of my life, be able to run some kind of a complex event, whether it's, I don't know, being a wedding planner or like working for some company that needs me to organize a convention, or like setting up somebody's like, TED Talk or whatever. Like I feel like just knowing that I was able to do that in the past gives me the confidence to, in the future, like put together some other event.
Yeah. It's given me a lot more confidence in that as well, that any sort of event hosting. And I think like setting up interesting studio days or location kind of shoots, it gave me a lot more confidence in that I could be like, hey, I found this great location. Who wants to go and shoot me here?
Yeah.
And just various things like that. Like even how would you describe it? Your desert adventures that you do like a few times a year, like kind of end up almost in that same scenario. Like how can I give people this like bulk adventure and like one go versus like them having to come and like find their own locations and like maybe book me for like 2 hours and like, yeah, it's giving people a lot more options. And I thought about doing this thing that I've kind of learned a lot from Dakota about is she hosts a lot of like workshops for usually newer photographers as well as like studio days where she comes up and brings a lot of concepts. But she started teaching some of the things that she learns, like how to work with a model or what's some like nice, interesting, easy lighting to do, how to work with window light. And I thought about maybe starting to do more teaching kinds of workshops that would be smaller based.
Yeah. And that's actually, I was just thinking of segueing into it. We have time to talk about one more idea that models can get into for making income on the side, and teaching or creating online courses or offering some kind of one-on-one mentorship for other models. That's another way, or I guess that's maybe 3 different ways that like if you have a lot of experience in freelance modeling, it's a good way to monetize on sharing the experience that you have to help others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that as well. I think it's, after like 10 years in a business, you're like, okay, I feel like I know a few things that I could impart, Oh
yeah. I do little like short consultations. So if someone wants to like pick my brain for 30 minutes or an hour, I'll like charge, what am I doing now? I think I was doing $60 for 30 minutes or $120 for an hour. I know it's not like that. It's not a deal. It's just like, those are the 2 prices.
It's
basically, yeah, $2 a minute pretty much. And they can pick my brain or I can give them an idea of like where to start, just whatever they need, kind of one-on-one. It's kind of cheap, but it wasn't really necessarily to me about just making money as far as like, I got hit up a lot about people wanting to get into modeling. And when I would give a lot of people advice, they're not always actually that interested in taking it. So I realized that the people who are really interested are more likely going to pay a little bit of money. I know sometimes that's hard for super new people. And I wouldn't mind like offering more of this mentorship or almost doing an agency kind of thing where I'm like, here's my contacts, let me like help you learn how to like put together a tour. But I always think back to when I first started modeling and hearing, do not pay people to teach you to model. And like, I think it's just like, it goes back to like agencies or anything else. But it's just like, there's going to be a lot of scams out there and you might be completely legit, but like, how do you convince people you're legit, the other people might not be legit, but like, I don't know. So I think it's a little, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have noticed or have had any experiences in that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about like consultations I think are really cool, but I think I'd like to do some kind of like a course online that people could just purchase so that I don't have to interact with them. I really like that about my website that people can just go on there and like randomly buy stuff and like I don't even have to know that person. And a course I think would be really easy, and I've been thinking about it a lot because also like, photographers would be like, you should teach a posing workshop. And just the idea of trying to like conceptualize body movements into like verbs and stuff and words sounds so hard that I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. I just announced, but this is going to be my last year of full-time modeling. So I'm going to like transition into, doing it intentionally part-time, and being like, okay, like I can maybe accept like a few clients a year, but everything that we've been talking about right now is like very much what I've been thinking about in terms of like side gigs and all these things. It's like 10 years in a career is really awesome, but for me, it's kind of felt like, okay, what's next?
What's next? Yeah.
How can it grow?
And online course is something you could just set up and then people will residually purchase it as long as the information remains relevant.
Or I also know a few models who have set up their Patreon to be that way or their OnlyFans. so that we sign up for that and get constant feedback, or if they have any questions, then they can message through things like that as well. Sometimes it's just an easy way, rather than if you don't want to go through the process of trying to figure out how to make an e-course that you then have to sell on your website. But there's a lot of ways to go about doing it in general. Yeah, I've been thinking about like with photography, but I've also been thinking about, weirdly enough, like, because so much of modeling is also business related. I know we talked about virtual assistant work, but I have to hire a CPA every year to try to figure out how to do my taxes. And freelance taxes are not easy, especially if you move from state to state or have multiple like weird income sources. And I was just like, why don't I just learn to do it? Why don't I just learn to do my own financial bookkeeping and then learn how to do my own taxes? And then if it works out really well, I could probably help other freelancers, because one of the hard parts too about looking for a CPA to do this is that most CPAs don't have a lot of experience with weird freelance jobs.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, you guys,
there's so many ways to go about it.
Yep. Lots of ways to deviate.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say I've been really inspired by like this entire discussion, because it's kind of reinvigorating me to come up to actually not just think about it, but like take action on some of these side quests that like I'm definitely going to sign up to participate in Whitney's figure drawing sessions online. It's silhouette and shadow, right?
Yes. Join us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been dying to do that forever, so I should just tell myself I'm going to now.
Yeah, do it.
Right.
You can do it from home. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wear that outfit that the photographer would not shoot.
Exactly. But yeah, no, this has been really inspiring. It's been really interesting. I love getting to talk about this kind of stuff. And I feel like, I don't know, in general, the podcast has gone over a lot of things that I wish I'd known before getting into modeling. And sometimes I feel like such an idiot that I did modeling full time, when like a good portion of models are not doing, maybe not modeling, but like, you know, the freelance going to photographer houses modeling full time.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I feel like I was an idiot for so long, being like, how are people doing this? How are people paying all their bills? And I don't know. Yeah. So it's just, it's great that you have all this information out there already. But of course, I mean, you could write courses on so many things for newer models or newer people. I thought for all models out there, let's just all write memoirs so people know how incredibly wild this industry is. I mean, people would, it's, I don't know, it's another direction.
I'm working on one right now.
How good.
Exciting.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for like getting together and like doing this episode with me. This has been like, awesome. I feel like I could go on and on, but like I actually do have to go.
We made so many notes on that brainstorming that we haven't even touched on. So if you want to do this again sometime, just hit us up. This was so fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I had a great time. I think the most important and best ideas, I think, that we did discuss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a great day, y'all.
All right.
Have a great day.
Talk to you guys later.